I know that I'm the last thing that stands between you and lunch, so I promise to take just 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll move things along. I have 3 things that I'd like to communicate with you today to do in the short time that I have available. But before I do that, I just want, this may be the last chance that we'll get, and I wanted to give us all an opportunity to thank Trevor and Michael and Angela for the extraordinary work that they've done in putting this together. I've had the privilege of serving as an informal advisor and helper to the organizers of this conference and the organizers of the PCC over the last couple of years, and they have worked tirelessly. The emails that I've been getting from them are around the clock, and I know that they're going to be collapsing from exhaustion after this, but I know that we all in our hearts are so grateful for what they've done. My name is Hal Plotkin, and I've been a social activist, a political activist, since the age of 14. That's 46 years that I've been at social activism. It started for me when I was 14 years old, and my mother, of blessed memory, took my sister and I out of school to go stand vigil outside the jail cell of Angela Davis, who was imprisoned in a jail not far from where we lived. And we sang, she took us out because she wanted us to sing songs all night long outside of Angela's jail cell to let her know that she was not alone. And I don't remember anything else that happened in school that week or in school that year, frankly. But I do remember standing outside that jail cell with wrapped in blankets and singing all night. It was a great thrill 30 years later to read Angela's autobiography and to see a section in one of the chapters where she talks about having been in prison that night and hearing the voices of children singing outside her jail cell. At that time, all we could do was sing. But we did sing, and it made a difference. And I tell you that story not because I'm important or because it's important that you know me, but because I want to make sure that you understand that I know and I recognize who you are. I've seen your likes before. I saw your faces standing next to me as a 14-year-old outside that jail cell. What I learned from that experience, more important than anything I ever learned in school, was that in the face of injustice and evil, it's not enough to not be part of the evil. It's not acceptable to be a bystander. You must take action when you're confronted with injustice and evil. That's what my mother taught me at that tender age. That's the most important animating lesson of my life. My mother, were she here today with us, would recognize all of you as well as people who refuse to be bystanders in the face of evil. That's what unites you. That's what unites us. So I want to ask you to do 3 things in real life, as we were talking about last night, that can help accelerate the success and the ability of the Platform Cooperative Consortium to serve the needs that we've heard expressed here today. Occasionally, Trevor shares with me his to-do list, and it's daunting. He and his colleagues are getting requests literally from all over the world, often from communities in great crisis, reaching out desperately for help and support. And we cannot respond fast enough to meet those needs. So the 3 things that you can do today in real life to help us are to pick up, before you leave this room today, one of these little slips of paper, and I'll explain what's on them. I'll leave them here for folks to grab. The first is, I've noticed that there are many cooperatives in the room who are not yet part of our circle of cooperators. And I want to urge you all to please reach out to Michael or to Trevor before the conference ends or immediately after you return to join our circle of cooperators. Our ability as an organization to attract the support that we need, including the resources that we need, is directly proportional to the number of you who participate in our circle of cooperators, so that when we approach potential funders and backers of this work, we can illustrate to them the global impact that their support of this organization can have. And if you're not part of the circle of cooperators, then you're not contributing to the center of gravity that allows us to attract the resources that we need in order to be successful. The second thing we've done, which you'll find on these little slips of paper, is there's a little tiny URL. We've heard brilliant presentations at this conference. It's been one of the most inspiring conferences I've ever attended. But there are many of you who haven't had a chance to talk. And there are many of you who haven't had a chance to express or to give us your advice about how you can most effectively be supported and how you can most effectively support others. So we've put together an online survey to make sure that we don't let this group disperse without gathering all of your collective wisdom and advice. It's a needs assessment survey where we seek to understand how you would prioritize the needs that you have as platform cooperative developers or managers, and to help us aggregate those responses in ways that will provide us the opportunity to be more effective in the support that we can provide. So there's a little tiny URL that's listed on these sheets of paper, and if you'll respond to that survey, you'll have, I think we'll give it 3 days after the conference, then we'll be able to get aggregate that data and share it back with you. And then finally, the last thing I will ask of you is to remind you that the organizers of this conference made a decision to keep the cost of attendance extraordinarily low. Most of the conferences that I attend, like many of you, the registration fee is usually somewhere between $400 and $800, something like that. I think we charged $5 because the conference organizers were so committed, working around the clock to raise money, because they didn't want to create a barrier to participation that might be created by a larger registration fee. But whether that model can work next year and the years ahead, it remains very much an open question. I know the organizers would like to keep the registration fee low, and one way that we can do that is that those of you who can afford to pay a registration fee, more similar to what you would usually pay to attend an activist or a scholarly conference of this sort, somewhere between $400, $800 is common, but if you can only pay $20, that will help. There's also a URL listed on the little sheets of paper here that will enable you to make a donation that will be used to try and preserve this model of participation at a low financial rate. So my last plea to you is to ask you to, as you leave here and as we move on with the rest of the program today, to please come take one of these little pieces of paper to make sure that your opinions and input and ideas and needs are properly assessed and registered, so, particularly those of you who haven't had an opportunity to speak. And for those of you who do have access to funds that can support this conference, to please dig deep and be as generous as you can so that we can continue to operate this conference in the spirit that's attracted all of you here today. It's an absolute honor to be here with you, and I thank you all for your work.